Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Marla Billinghurst, and I will be chairing the meeting this morning. To my immediate left is Mr. Robert Phillick, and to my far left is Mr. Robert Buss. To my right is our secretary this morning, Ms. Katie Sutherland, and the assessor for the city of Winnipeg is Mr. Matthew Baracus. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Baracus.
Okay, thank you. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matter for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. The first matter we will hear this morning, it's unnumbered on Scotia Street. Is there a number for this property, Mr. Assessor?
Yeah, that was
Roll number?
that one.
We just have Scotia Street on our records. So we do have a roll number, yes.
Okay, but there's no
No.
municipal address? Okay.
State your full name.
Matthew Stephen Baracus.
Do you affirm that the evidence that you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God?
Yes.
Mark Newman.
You swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God?
Okay, Mr. Assessor, please proceed. I'm ready.
Okay. Roll number is 05 0094246110. Vacant piece of land, 128,732 square feet, found at the southwest corner of Ridgecrest and Scotia on the other side of Main in Riverbend. You could see the location of the property on page 3 of my brief. Assessed value for the 2020 roll year, which is April 1st, 2018, $1,738,000. It's got RM, FM, res, multifamily zoning. Is intended to accommodate the development of multifamily units in neighborhoods with medium to high residential densities. So, Riverbend, it's close to, but does not back on to the river. There are some multi-residential developments around it. To the a little further down Ridgecrest, there's an assisted living as well. I believe that is the school across the street. So go to page 4, you see more of a picture of the piece of land itself. The street is not yet connected, as you see on page 3. It only goes about halfway down one side of the property on the east side. So the comps that I used, there's 3 of them. They bracket the subject property in terms of land area. They all have the same zoning. In terms of land influences, they're all external corners with some level of traffic influence to them. They aren't on bus routes. Our subject property is on a bus routes. So if you look at the sales of the properties, the sales took place between August of 2015 and June of 2017. Second and last line in the chart there on page 5, the sale price per square foot, rather, maybe better measure would be to say, the sale price per square foot ranges from $12.62 up to $13.42. And our subject property has a rate of $13.50 per square foot to come up with the land value of $1,738,000. So 2 of these sales were older, they're in 2015, and then sale comp number 2 is about 10 months before the reference date. So given that we're a little bit ahead in time from when the sales took place and the general nature of land going up, $13.50 seemed reasonable. The comparable properties are found, the photographs are found on pages 6 to 8. On page 8, I had to go and take a historical picture because it was older, and this was already post-replot when they had divided the land up, but it really is that if you traced a larger square-like rectangle surrounding, I don't think the last row of units on the right, but the smaller units inside of the last units on the right, you'd have our piece of land. So it's not chopped up, it's like a big square. Like comparable 1, it's actually just south of comparable 1 found on page 6, just to give you an idea of what comparable 3 looks like. So comparable 1 and comparable 3 are on Peguis, so they're in the new area that's located behind Kildonan Place, Club Region, Canadian Tire. There's a bunch of multifamily development going in there. So that's where those ones are located. Our subject property is in Riverbend, which is a bit a ways away. And comparable number 2, High Water Path, is located south of Jefferson in Inkster Gardens. So north of Addison, south of Jefferson, Inkster Gardens, out there by King Edward and Tyndall Park. So sales of land this big aren't super common, but given that they bracket the subject property in many respects, size, sale price per square foot, and land influences, I actually think they're pretty good comps. So as a conclusion to that, I didn't make any changes. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newman, do you have questions for the assessor?
I do. So, looking at your page 5, your comparable chart,
Yep.
you've indicated that the subject has a value of $13.50 per square foot.
That is correct.
which is $588,060 per acre by my calculation, which puts it higher than all of the comparables, correct?
Just looking on a square foot basis, it's higher, so what you're saying.
Yes.
Correct.
And comparable number 2 is the one that, from a timing perspective, is closest to the reference date, correct?
That is correct.
And I think you explained that comparables 1 and 3, both on Pegwis, looking at photo 8, or page 8 rather, the photo on page 8. So the top of page 8, the teardrop, the red teardrop,
Mhm.
is in a part of what is comparable number 3, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And just below it, along Pegwis, the other part, the other rectangle outlined in these sort of purple lines, that's the other part of what makes up comparable 3.
Yeah, it's a larger rectangle that they replotted and divided up. I couldn't get any photos
Right.
prior to the replot.
But it's actually, if you go online and search it, it's 2 separate rolls.
The 155 Pegwis?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you can see there's 2 separate values shown.
Well, it's the teardrop here, and it would be part of this larger square, just via the size of the property.
Right.
And then it was replotted and divided up into a bunch of smaller properties that then were developed and then presumably sold off.
Right. So this was a much larger parcel bought for purposes of being subdivided.
That is correct. It would be more like, it's actually just south of comparable 1. There's a picture of comparable 1, which had not been replotted yet.
Right.
On page 6, and that larger rectangle is what we'd be looking at for what comparable 3 was when it's sold.
And prior to the replotting of comparable 3.
Yes, yes.
So what we have with comparable 3 is a parcel of land that is bought for being subdivided into single-family dwelling lots.
Yeah, it was divided up for smaller pieces.
As we see in the picture on page 8, the top picture.
Yes.
Right, all those separate lots came out of that purchase.
Yep, that's correct.
Right. So, and then your comparable number 2, Inkster Garden, so just in a more general sense, your comparables 1 and 3 are east of the Red River.
That's correct.
Comparable 2 is west of the Red River, as is the subject.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so comparable number 2, and again, that's the most proximate in time, that sold at $12.80 a square foot. And when you look at your photos, just look now at page 6, which is your comparable number 1. You can see that that property is bounded essentially by 3 streets, correct?
Yes.
By Pegwis, by Ivy Bridge, and by Vicar Drive, Larry Vicar Drive down at the bottom.
Yes.
And then your high water path, which is your page 7, is bounded by High Water Path and Dr. Jose Rizal Way, correct?
Yes, and there's some residential, I think, behind it as well.
And there's actually a street back there as well. So it's got theoretically street access from 3 sides. Correct?
Yes.
And then your comparable number 3, which is found on page 8, that's got access from what is called Cal Gardner Drive towards the bottom of the photo, from Pegwis along the left side of the photo, and then down at the bottom was another street which created access to these additional lots.
Yes.
Whereas the subject, which is shown in your photo on page 3, and you made note of this, you indicated that the street is not connected, and this property really has access only off a part street in front.
Yeah, there's less traffic going around each side of it.
Right. So this is gonna require additional servicing in order to make it fully accessible, correct? compared to the others?
Well, if it was to be, if we're just counting the amount of streets that are surrounding it, it looks like the most we could get is 2, just based on the development and its relative location.
Right, and the great and when you say 2, you mean Ridgecrest, which is along the northern boundary, looking at the bottom photo on
That's
page.
correct.
And then you mean that part of Scotia that comes part way in.
Yeah, yeah.
But of course, the majority of the lot is much further south than Ridgecrest. There's only a smaller frontage along Ridgecrest, correct?
Yeah, they would probably end up just carrying on and then dead ending it. Like I've ridden my bike through there before.
Yeah.
There's the old clubhouse is there, there's some nice houses. I think it would be unlikely that given the access to that area off of Main Street, that they would push it all the way through.
Right. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buss, any questions?
So Mr. Newman was referring to page 8. You said it has access, street access from 3 sides, but from the west, there's another strip of land there. Do the same parties own that strip of land to get to Peguis?
Let me just check the size of the stairs. You know, I cannot confirm, what does it say here? So 225, Peguis was 139 square feet. The sale, the picture is found on page 6. And then page 3, page 8 is comparable number 3. It's 152,000 square feet. So there's about 13,000 more square feet to that. So, you know, I don't have the answer to that question.
Okay. And the subject property, picture the subject property on page 3. So that Scotia Street is in and the loop is there, we see cars parked there.
Yeah, it's looped, like if you see on
Yeah.
page
Okay.
4, it goes a certain amount and then they looped it around.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Mr. Philip, any questions?
No, it's just, this is further Scotia Street down here that it just hasn't been connected to the loop.
Yeah, there'd probably be an argument from those residents in terms of connecting that street. Because it goes further that way, passes the cemetery, and then it shoots back up to Maine, closer to Chief Peguis Bridge. I don't know if it would ever be connected.
So if that was never connected, if you built something in this area, how would you get out?
How would you get out? You'd get out through this part of Scotia and then out Ridgecrest way. That connects over to Maine.
Okay. I have no other question.
Any questions? I have no questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Newman, please proceed with your presentation.
I'll be brief. And I just relying on what the assessors provided here, and in fairness, just so the panel knows, the assessor and I did have communication, and he was good enough to share with me his comparables in advance, so I was aware of what we would be addressing. So if you look at page 5, you see the 3 sales utilized as comparables. The one that is closest in time is comparable 2 at $12.80 a square foot. The other 2 comparables, number 1 and number 3, a little bit more dated, but also bought, I'm going to suggest, for somewhat of a different purpose, in the sense that they were bought to be subdivided into single-family lots. My submission to you is that putting the subject at $13.50 a square foot is excessive, considering the nature of the property. The subject does not have the same flexibility in terms of access that the comparables do based on our review of the mapping and the surrounding streets. Additionally, it has a street that only goes part of the way in front. And my suggestion to you is that you should select a value in the range of $12.50 a square foot to $12.80 a square foot. In my view, the most comparable property is comparable number 2, the High Water Path property. That has better flexibility in terms of access, I would suggest. So I would suggest to you a total value in the range of $1,609,000, which is $12.50 to $1,647,000, which is $12.80. And again, based on the fact that comparable number 2 at $12.80 is more proximate in terms of location on the west side of the river as well. Better, I'm suggesting to you, in terms of flexibility of access, but it sets, I would suggest, the ceiling, and that the subject should be no more than that, and I would suggest a little bit less at $12.50 a square foot for $1,609,000. Those are my submissions.
Thank you. Mr. Assessor, questions?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Buss, any questions?
You said that the comparables 1 and 3 would be subdivided for single-family property.
Right.
Is that similar, do you see that similar happening, a similar situation for the subject property?
The zoning, the present zoning doesn't allow for that. It's zoned for multifamily. So, could that be the subject of a rezoning? Theoretically, it could. It's going to lead to a need to extend services. And the other problem is, if you look at the map on page 3, or the photos on page 3 rather, even if this was big enough to create a series of lots, there's no access street on the west. Ridgecrest is to the north, so to the left-hand side of the photo is the west. There's no access street from the west, so you couldn't create 2 sets of lots, or 2 streets of lots, if I can use that phrase. So I think it's less likely. And additionally, the surrounding area is a combination of commercial to the west, the school across the street, as the assessor notes, and it's got established multifamily that you can see in the lower photo on page 3 to the east. So I think it's unlikely that it would be as desirable for single-family lots.
Okay, all the zoning for all 3 comparables and the subject is all the same, multifamily?
It is, but I would think that there must have been a rezoning in order to convert. When you look at the photo on page 8, there must have been a rezoning to create that.
That's all my questions, thank you.
Mr. Phillip, any questions?
I do. Do you know when the property was purchased?
It was purchased many, many years ago. The buyer is the company that developed the independent living complexes to the east. So it was part of a much larger acquisition many, many years ago. They do not have further plans to build any more of the independent living. So All Seniors is the company, and these complexes are called River Ridge 1 and River Ridge 2. Further east along Ridgecrest and along the river. And again, you see them in photo on page 3, the bottom photo. You can see where those 2 complexes were built.
Just show down here, this one?
Yes, so in the lower photo, there and there,
Okay.
those buildings that you see the roofs of.
So you do not know what is the future to be developed at all?
They are experienced, sophisticated operators of these independent living facilities. Many of them have been built around the city over the last little while, and they've indicated to me they do not plan to build another one, certainly in the near future.
Or on this property?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning.
Okay, the next matter on this morning's docket is 124A Mayfair Avenue. Good morning.
Swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
So. Over there.
Did you copy to the assessor?
There's another one.
Oh, there's another.
And then this one, and pass this one.
Thank you.
Just a package for both properties.
Okay. This is the other, next one.
Does everyone have 2 copies? One for each property?
Right.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll be starting with 124A Mayfair Avenue. Mr. Assessor, please proceed when you're ready.
124A Mayfair Avenue, bill number 12032312200. MHRC is the owner. Roll year 2020, April 1, 2018. Reference date assessed at $2,178,000. Last time around, it was assessed at $2,009,000. VRES 2, same zoning as the last property, RM, FM, res, multifamily. 41,743 square feet. So if you go to page 2, you will see property. I believe I put a star on it. So is that the Mayfair and Harkness, just north of River. So this is in the River Osborne area. Given the character of the neighborhood, the amount of multi-family there, in my opinion, this would be a highly desirable piece of land, given the demand and the elevated rents for renting in this area due to it's Osborne Village. People like Osborne Village. So page 4, sales comps. Looking for sales comps. Our subject's pretty big. It's 41,743 square feet. So our sales comps, they range from just under 6,000 square feet up to 9,923 square feet. They're all zoned the same. I restricted my search to this type of zoning. Zoning matters quite a bit as it restricts what sort of development can be put on this property, but sort of return the investor could hypothesize. There's restrictions in terms of the amount of units one can build between R2, RMFS, or MFL. So it's important that we stuck to the zoning on this one. So the map, you'll see, okay, another thing to note, the date of sale. So when I was looking for sales of the zoning of this property, I looked at the old brief, the brief from previous year, and I looked at those comps, typically something I do, and I saw that these sales, while not nearly as big as the subject property, they are a lot larger than what I found in the immediate area closer to the reference date. So the values of land in Winnipeg have been going up. So looking at the land sale comparables from the last brief, you see the date of sale goes all the way back to January of 2013 on sale comp number 3 up to February of 2015. So looking at those sale prices per square foot, they range from 55 to 75. So they're above the subject property in terms of a sale price per square foot basis. We're at 52, so we're on the lower end. I mean, given the size of the property, that does make sense in terms of economies of scale. But I mean, that being said, the property is, I mean, who's to say a developer couldn't, even though we're dealing with it as is, who's to say that they couldn't apply to get it divided up, build more than one improvement on it, investment, if you will. Land influences, they're in this similar area, not too far from Osborne Village. They've all got traffic and commercial. One is a bus route on it, corner influences. It's a desirable area. So the pages following show just the pictures of the comps, so they're smaller. So it's just an idea of what others are paying for smaller lots on a per square foot basis. And it's not a small square footage, and you can see in the pictures, there's a lot of multifamily development around, because it's a good investment. Condos, apartments in Osborne Village, I don't think in Winnipeg are ever gonna go out of style. So, given the, I would have liked to have more recent comps, but if people were paying between 55 and 75, 75 back in 2013, and 55 as well, and then 15 they're paying 65. I think 52 on the low end is quite reasonable if we're looking at a reference date, 5 years onward. So I didn't make any changes. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for the assessor?
I do, yes. You had briefly mentioned there something to the effect of who's to say what the owner may do with the property. They may apply to subdivide it or something of that nature.
Mhm.
That's not what we're assessing today, is it?
No, we're just looking at what.
We're assessing what the property is as it stands, as the valuation.
Right.
correct?
I was just trying to say that a potential purchaser, they would probably think of that scenario, but we're just looking at what the subject property is right now. So that is correct.
Okay, so were you entertaining thoughts of like single family, or I'm not quite sure I followed that train of thought. It's as a multifamily site, it would be valued higher than if it were to be subdivided down to residential or something of that nature, which I don't believe they would receive there anyway.
No, not residential. It is putting more than one apartment on it.
Okay. Looking, so I've got kind of three main points here. So looking at the comparables on page 4, looking at the three of them here, we have 6,000 square feet 7367 square feet, 9,923. These are essentially single lots, correct?
They're much smaller.
So they would
yeah.
be a quarter to an eighth of the size of the subject property, roughly speaking, right?
Yeah, that would be fair, yeah.
Okay. And as you had mentioned, smaller size lot would typically on a per square foot basis drive a much higher price per square foot on sale, correct? If you were to buy a similarly zoned property of 6,000 square feet versus 42,000 square feet, that would, they would trade for a significantly different price per square foot, all other things being equal, correct?
I know that's pretty true in terms of like agricultural land. I don't have the most experience in residential, vacant, multifamily. Being in Osborne Village, I think it would be pretty valuable, but typically what you're saying is the case in terms of land, yes.
Okay, thank you. And location, you had mentioned that it's in the River Osborne area. So I'm looking at the bottom of your page 4 there. And the subject itself is the blue dot on the map on the top right-hand corner,
Mhm.
right, located to the east of Donald Street, north of River, just off of Main. That's where it is?
Yeah, so maybe it'd be more accurate to say it's kind of between Osborne and Broadway, Assiniboine.
Okay, and the comparables themselves, so I'm looking at them here. We have 522 River, that's right across the street from the Safeway, correct? In Osborne Village, kind of right in the heart of the village?
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay. And Stradbrook, obviously quite close to Osborne itself there, so again, right in the heart of the village. Wardlaw, very similar, just off of Osborne. These would be considered significantly different in terms of location, in terms of the attractiveness to a buyer or a renter, would they not?
Well, I mean, it's serviced by the same area, like those people would be going to the same restaurants and the same Shoppers Drug Mart. And you could get by getting there without a vehicle. But to your point, yes, the comparables are a shorter walk.
Okay. And then time-wise, so as you had mentioned, the sales that you've got here from 2013 and 2015, they're significantly older sales, are they not? There would be
Yeah,
RMFM sales
yeah.
that would be closer to the subject time frame, wouldn't there?
Sorry, can you say that the last part again?
There would be similarly zoned sales in the city that would have transacted closer to the valuation date, wouldn't there?
If there are arm's length ones in our system that were there, then I must have missed them, but these are the ones that I could find.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's all your questions?
That's all my questions.
Mr. Buss, questions?
No questions, Mr.
Okay, Mr. Phillip? Okay, I have no questions either, so please proceed with your presentation when you're ready.
Great, thank you very much. So, subject property is owned by Manitoba Housing. Actually both of them today did have multifamily structures on them. They were built some time ago in the 60s or 70s. Not sure if everybody remembers what they looked like. You get past this site as it is a one-way street. If you look at my page number 6, if you're heading north on Donald 42 there. Along the river, you turn right onto Stradbrook, and then you hang a north on what is called Harkness, but becomes Mayfair as it fronts in front of the subject property. Your access brings you into that area in that manner there. So it's an area of one-way streets, and you pass by the front heading east towards Main Street, right where I guess is it Queen Elizabeth Way that it's called at that point in time on Main Street, I believe. So the development on that site was a Manitoba housing structure. It was a little unique in that they were kind of blocky, and they had kind of like stacked cubes a little bit, and they had an interior kind of area at the back that you could access from the sidewalk at the front, so you walk exteriorly through the building. So there was a lot of nooks and crannies. It really wasn't a particularly safe structure in the city, and it had some deterioration, etc., and it was deemed that it needed to come down. So the ownership, Manitoba Housing, has demolished those structures, and I guess is going through the exercise of what they will do with the land going forward. That's the background of it. In terms of location, again, if you look at my page number 5 to start with, just to the east of the site that's bordered in red there is the Fort Rouge Elementary School, I believe it's called. Just as an aside, I know that my children's school donates library books to that particular school, just in terms of giving you a background on what the economics of that area is. This particular area, River and Osborne, is a lower income area. It's not like the Osborne Village area on River, on Stradbrook right there. It's significantly different. If you look across the street to the north, across Mayfair, there's, I believe, there's a children's agency that has built a structure there recently on land that they owned. They formerly had other structures on there, so they've built a structure there. It's a child and family services type of location. I forget the name of the organization at the moment, but they're there for a reason, because they're
McDonald Youth Services.
That's correct. Thank you very much. There's certainly a large number of people that they service that are in that immediate area. So where these two sites are located is significantly different than the Osborne Village area itself in terms of the socioeconomics of the area, as well as obviously what land values would be in the marketplace itself. So just to move on, looking at page number 3, we have a lot size just under an acre at 41,743 square feet. It is zoned RMFM, vacant residential 2 is the property use code. We have a couple of pictures of, one picture of the site on page 4. You can see the aerial on page 5. And then the location on page number 6 itself. So that's the background. We can move on to the market value. What we've done, just for the board's sake, so that you can see the broader spectrum of multifamily sales in Winnipeg, is at Cushman Wakefield Stevenson, we obviously track the sales that occur in the marketplace, as it's our business to do appraisal and valuation, as well as sales and leasing, etc. So we have our finger on the pulse of that, and we have compiled the multifamily sales over the last number of years from the reference period itself. And I've presented those on pages 9 through 12. The point isn't to look at any one particular in sale and say that here's the comp that really points to what the value of these two sites are. It's to show you the general direction of sales in terms of size and location, as well as zoning, etc. So I've organized them by land size, not by date. So if you look at the top of the chart, we have the largest sales, and generally speaking, you're going to see lower price per square foot transactions at the upper end of the scale there, whether they're zoned RMFL or RR5, etc. You can see the scale of the transactions there. We're into the multiple acres on the first page there, obviously not directly comparable to the subject, but you can see that we're kind of in that $10 to $15 range for the most part there. If we move on to page number 2, the size obviously drops. For the subject property, I have highlighted in yellow the sales that are of a similar size to the subject, going up 10,000 square feet and then down 10,000 square feet. So we're within that 32 to 53,000 square foot range, subject itself being 41,000. That's pretty tight range, and we do have quite a number of sales to look at in that sphere. As you go further down the list, the city's comps were 9,000 square feet and under. If you look at the price per square foot for the transactions occurring in that range, obviously the sale price goes up fairly significantly, and you're looking at $40 per square foot, $105, $58, $80 per square foot, etc. They're kind of in that 50 and up range dominantly from what I see here. So the area, the section, or the comparables rather, that I've highlighted in yellow, obviously they are throughout the city. Now, the attractiveness and value of a lot, obviously location has a significant amount to do with that. Whether it's in St. Patel or Tuxedo or St. James, there can be obviously very attractive sites that have things that drive significant value. Again, we're in this River Osborne area. It is close to downtown, but it is not Osborne Village area itself. So the comparables that we're seeing here are starting at the top there. We have RMFM on Lodge and Silver Heights. We're under $12 there. Garden City, a little under $20 per square foot. $12 on Arlington. Bridgewater site at a little over an acre at $21.33 in 2017. A number in the teens, and as you go down to the area right around the subject property in terms of size, we have Park West in Bridgewater at $27 a square foot in the late 2015 sale. $22 a square foot on Leela, probably not as good a location, at roughly the same size as the subject. $24 a square foot on St. Anne's in Royalwood, certainly a very good location. $28 a square foot in Inkster Gardens. And on downwards, there's kind of a concentration in that upper $20 per square foot range, right down to the sale on 1201 St. Anne's at the bottom of the ones that I've highlighted, that being located in Royalwood in South St. Patel at a rate of $13 a square foot. If you, as you go through these sales and look at the subject location, yes, it's close to downtown, yes, it's significant size. It's not an area that a lot of developers would necessarily entertain building a significant multifamily site. Not to say that some won't, but obviously there's a different value that would be applied in that particular area. So looking at the comps, it points towards a value of $30 a square foot as of the valuation date for the subject property. So we arrive at a market value of $1,252,000 based on the information provided there. I'm open for questions.
Mr. Assessor, do you have any questions?
Yeah, looking at your list here, you've highlighted a bunch of properties. Are these are not all RMFM properties, right?
That's
Most of them
correct.
have different zoning.
There is somewhat different zoning, but they are all multifamily transactions where they've either been subsequently been built on or the plan is to develop multifamily on them.
Okay, so I see like Peguis, Inkster Gardens, Bridgewater, Rosewood, Silver Heights. These are all suburban areas, correct?
Yes, for the most part, they are suburban in the ones that I have highlighted being around the same subject size.
So in terms of like the availability of land, would you agree that there's more land available for development in the suburban areas of the city than in the downtown area?
Certainly, there would be more land in suburban areas now. That doesn't specifically mean there would be where these transactions themselves occurred. We'd have to look at each one. Obviously, location has a significant impact on sale price in terms of the attractiveness of a property to a developer.
Just, okay, given the size of the property and just, we both did some comp searches, would you agree that a piece of land this big in this area of town really doesn't become available, or it's just not around a lot?
I would agree that it is an unusual amount of land for that area, and of course, it's owned by the owner for some time, and they don't have no intent of venting it, to my knowledge.
Okay. So, just looking at your comps,
It's generally land assemblies if you develop a parcel of this size.
so I'm looking at, would you say that, I'm looking at some comps here. Further down on page 11, there's some that jump out to me. There's two on McMillan, 693 McMillan, which is about 3/4 of the way down, sold for $105 per square foot, and it's about 9,000 square foot. It's got RMFL zoning, that's why it didn't pop up on my search, and it's in the Osborne area, and there's Nassau below it in the Osborne area, sold for 58,
Right.
87, and then the second last one, zoned R2, in Crescentwood, 57 per square foot. And then the very last one, Crescentwood, sold for 63, with also R zoning. Are these areas not more similar? And not only in geographic relativity, but also in character to the subject?
No, the the sales that you're looking at on McMillan there, that is, if I'm not mistaken, there is one developer that was assembling a number of properties on the same street for a larger development. So obviously buying buying it lot by lot is going to drive a significantly higher price. And again, Osborne Village, McMillan versus where this is significantly different. But more than that, RMFL, you can develop significantly higher density on the site, so a lot more units. So you can pay more for an RMFL property than you can for an RMFM property. And most importantly, again, you're looking at well under 10,000 square feet for these sales. And the number of developers that are out there for sites of that size is significantly higher. It drives more competition. You get a higher price paid for the property on a per square foot basis at the smaller size scale.
So the ones, you're saying the ones on McMillan and Crestwood, they're buying it for one big development?
I know there was a developer that was acquiring properties on, I believe it was McMillan, it was essentially an assembly and they were putting them together. Now, I did not look at this specifically before we came in today. As you had mentioned, we don't have a lot of time to do this particular hearing, so I won't say for sure that those 3 sales or 4 that we're looking at are the identical ones, but I believe that to be the case, yes.
Okay. So, just like Google mapping stuff, it's about a 15-minute walk from the Safeway in Osborne Village. It's about a 12-minute walk from the Keg on Broadway. And it's, you know, probably about a 10, 15-minute walk to being at the Forks. This doesn't sway your valuation at all?
None whatsoever, no. As I've explained, size, location in particular are significantly different. Looking at the comps that were provided in Osborne Village that are a quarter to an eighth of the size is really not comparable to the subject property where it's located. We're just off of Main Street. We're in a socioeconomically depressed area. No, it doesn't change my valuation. I've presented every sale that occurred of multifamily land in the city in the relevant time frame, without exception. So the board's free to look through those and see if they agree with my evaluation.
So then I guess you don't agree with the 2018 assessment of just over 2 million?
I don't.
Those are my questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buss, any questions?
Yes, could they build a high-rise on here? They're not that far from the river, views of the river, et cetera. Could they build a high-rise?
Well, according to the RMFM zoning, they would be able to build within what's allowed under the regulations. So the bulk tables, there's a limit to the height of the structure that you can build under RMFM compared to RMFL.
Do you know what
RMFS
that
is
limit
different.
is?
I didn't bring my zoning book in today, but it's not a high rise. Let's say the 2 that went up on Assiniboine in recent years, you couldn't build a structure such as that.
Okay. The sale on page 10 on Hugo, 690 Hugo, I think that's, in terms of size, it's quite a bit bigger, but would you think that's a comparable type sale? It's sort of in that Osborne Village area, and it's more than a sort of a single lot.
Which page were we on there? The Hugo?
Page 10, about the middle of the page,
Oh, yes,
690
I see it now.
Hugo, 1573 a square foot, about roughly twice the size of the subject property.
Right.
Is that still vacant? Do you know if that's still vacant?
I am not positive whether that has been developed yet. Our chart has more columns in it that wouldn't fit nicely on the page, so I do have it noted as to what is transacted with each of these, but I don't specifically remember whether that one has been developed already, but certainly the intent was to develop on it. It's double the size, so certainly that would generally draw a lower value per square foot, but it's an indicator certainly.
Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillip.
I have a couple. Manitoba Housing Renewal Corporation is a nonprofit organization.
It is a non-profit entity attached to the provincial government, yes.
Right. And the original building that was demolished, listening to you, it sounded to me like the design was not very good.
It,
It turned out to be not very good.
right, I think it was developed at a time where, you know, they were trying things out essentially, so the safety aspects perhaps weren't thought of at the time.
And of course, this organization's function is to provide accommodation like that.
That's correct.
So the fact that it was demolished because of the design would have not ended up thinking that we're in that location, we're near other organizations that are helping out also the school, McDonald, so forth. Did they not talk about building a new apartment or project or whatever to still fit the need of what was there originally? And when you said you talked to your client,
Mhm.
did they say what their future intention is for that piece of property, either to build on it or sell it?
They generally are not sellers, as their mandate as Manitoba Housing is to provide housing for low-income citizens essentially throughout Manitoba. So they're going through that exercise of what to do with the site. But yes, the intent, to my knowledge, is to redevelop the site with a more appropriate housing structure that fits the needs of people in the current day.
Which seemed to be that area that they should be servicing.
Yes, I fully expect that they will build a new structure on these two sites that will service Manitobans.
And what year was those buildings demolished?
I am afraid that I don't have that information for you, but I know that it is within the last, in fact, the city might have that info, but I'd say within the last 4 years. At the
I don't
most,
have that
outside.
unfortunately, no.
I didn't check on that before I came in, but I have driven past it in recent years and
I
it was
think you're
still
right,
there,
yes,
so,
roughly that time frame.
yeah.
No other questions?
All my questions have been asked
Okay.
and answered, so thank you very much. We're going to take a very quick recess. All right, we are going to reconvene this hearing. The next matter on the docket is 145A River Avenue. Mr. Assessor, please proceed when you are ready.
145A River, roll number 120322842200. 2020 roll year, April 1, 2018, assessed value of $1,529,000. RMFM, multifamily, view as 23,753 square feet. Page 4, you'll recognize those comps, we just talked about them. Page 5, you'll see that I started, it's right behind the property we were just talking about. So Mayfair is the longer piece and River is the shorter piece. So, without belaboring it, we talked about the comps, we questioned each other about the area and whatnot. So we're using a $64 per square foot rate on the lot, which falls into the range of the sales comparables that I've provided and previously discussed. Therefore, no change was made. You can see that beside the property on page 4, or page 5 rather, you see that there, it looks like there's, on an roughly equal sized lot, there's 2 apartments and 2 smaller lots, could be single family dwellings. I can't really see the picture, but that just further speaks to the, potential suitability in keeping with the character of the neighborhood to divide it up and put more than one property on this and the other. So, without belaboring it, $64, 37 cents per square foot falls in line with the comps. That's my submission, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, do you have questions for the assessor?
I won't repeat my questions regarding the comps. Again, they're just size, location, and timing, and as long as we're all fine with that. I guess my one different question on this would be River Avenue. There is a one-way street, correct, running to the west?
Yeah, River's a one-way.
And there's no access off of Main Street there onto River Avenue, correct?
I don't think I've ever come that way. I think you'd have to loop around like Stratbrook and Harkness and take a right.
What I'm getting at, I guess, is it's an awkward location to access, correct? You have your rear laneway, I guess, that would be between Mayfair and River. But the River Avenue frontage itself, to my knowledge, there's a light at Harkness and River there. And I believe it's just a one-way running west.
Yeah, it's not, doesn't have like a main street going. River is a one-way going that way. Yeah.
Treating it as a normal market land, multifamily land, that would have some impact on the desirability of that site, would it not?
Well, it might
In terms of
provide for-
access for tenants with vehicles, et cetera.
With vehicles, I think there's a lot of people without vehicles in that area.
Certainly. That's my only question.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buss, any questions?
Yes, I had asked Mr. Smith earlier about the potential for building a high-rise building or something. Do you know what, under the present zoning, what they could build there?
I tried to bring it up on my phone after you asked, but I couldn't find it. My phone's too slow. So unfortunately, I've got that written down for the next hearing to come with that sort of information. I know, yeah. Sorry.
That's fine. That was my only question. Thank you.
Mr. Phillip, any questions?
No questions.
Great. I actually have one question that I noticed, and on your picture for 381 Stradbrook, there appears to be a house on that property.
Yeah, that would have been demolished.
Oh,
It was purchased for demolition.
oh, okay. Thank you. That's my only question. Okay, Mr. Smith, please go ahead.
Okay,
Your
so
presentation.
145 River Avenue, as mentioned, and shown on the city's aerial and my aerial on page number 6, is immediately adjacent to the other property just across the back lane, formed part of the same development by Manitoba Housing. Certainly it's my understanding that they're going through the exercise of determining what to build on the site, not whether they will build on the site. Just going through that exercise, so the intent would be to build on the site again, not to vend the property on the marketplace. Certainly under RMFM, they will build a sizable development on there to meet the needs of the cohort that they serve, that being the lower socioeconomic residents of Winnipeg and Manitoba. So we're not saying that the site isn't going to be developed, certainly it will be. It won't be multiple buildings on each site. I don't imagine it will be within the bounds of what they can build. It will probably maximize their ability to service the residents that they need to, whether that be families that need 3 and 4 and 5 bedrooms or smaller units. Typically, Manitoba Housing needs to service families that have a greater need for more bedroom space given the size of their families, et cetera. So you end up with developments that have a greater number of higher bedroom number units than one would find in the typical marketplace. Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside from what we're dealing with here today, but it will be built on. It will not be a tower, as that's not permitted. I am just awaiting finding out what the size limitation is on RMFM. I do know that in Osborne Village, there was Osborne Village itself on Osborne, there is an area plan or whatever they're referred to as that under the RMFM, you were restricted in height, and don't quote me on this because I'm not looking at it and I haven't got my answer yet, but you were restricted in height to somewhere around 8 to 10 stories, I believe, was the number. Don't quote me on that. Under RMFL, you can obviously build significantly higher density than that, but they will obviously build on the site. So moving on, subject property itself located on river, it is 23,752 square feet, so it's a little over half an acre. There are pictures of it on page number 4. It has been fenced off following demolition of the former structure on the site, located in exactly the same area. Our chart showing all the multifamily land sales in the city in the relevant time frame is the same one. What I have highlighted for this property here is the sale comparables that are similar in size, again, to the subject property. There's a number of RMFS, RMFM within this cohort of sales, and you can see that they're located in areas that would be in demand, such as Royalwood, St. Boniface, Waverly West, Inkster Gardens. So the sales that we're looking at range between, call it 33,000 down to 20,000 is what I have highlighted here. Obviously, you're free to look at the other sales that are provided as well. And as you can see, the numbers generally are a bit higher as the size is somewhat lower. It tends to drive a higher price, all other things being equal. The property on 119 University, RMFM, 28,000 square feet at $49.10. Certainly a high watermark, that and the Pembina property, which was actually zone C2. 2525 Pembina is actually the corner of Bison and Pembina, I believe, or very close to it. 2525 Pembina. It's either where the Tim Hortons is just north of Bison, or on the southwest corner where the of Bison and Pembina, where the university residences are going up, not university owned, but student housing essentially. The one on University itself, an excellent site that would drive very high rents. Sold for $49.10 a square foot, 28,000 square feet, so similar in size. That would certainly be the upper end of the range of what one would pay. You can't find a site much better than that particular one. That was in 2016. So we're looking in that range of 20 to $20 to $50 roughly on the very outside there. We have property on St. Anne's in Royalwood, 31,000 square feet, selling at $33 a square foot in early 2018. You can see the ones that fall outside of the range that I have highlighted there. Looking at the site itself, the size of it, location, we have used a price per square foot of $40 per square foot. I feel this is quite optimistic in putting $40 a square foot on it. But we have gone with that number based on the sale comparables that we're looking at on these charts. So using $40 a square foot, we come to a market value of $950,000, and my answer has come in, and the max building height for RMFM is 60 feet, which is probably roughly five or six stories, I believe. So it's slightly lower than what I had indicated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have questions for the?
Yeah, you previously mentioned the location, it being awkward to get to. There's a school right there, right, Fort Rouge School?
There is a school, yes.
So, for someone looking to rent and having kids, and knowing that outside of the school, would there not be a reduced amount of traffic, which would be desirable for someone looking to potentially rent there?
There'd be a less, I would say there'd be a lesser degree of travel. I wouldn't say there'd be a lesser degree of traffic in the neighborhood. You're right on the Stradbrook River Thruway to Main Street that everybody takes off of Donald. If you go further east, you have Main Street, so certainly the traffic volume is very dense in the neighborhood, not necessarily on River right in front of the site.
Okay, and, let's see. I already asked my questions about the comps and the character of the neighborhood, so I'm just gonna save it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buss?
Well, just to clear up how you get there, I go there around there on my bike once in a while. When you come off the Main Street Bridge and you want to go up Stradbrook, there's that kind of dental office, and you just go around the corner there and behind there, and then you can go onto River Avenue. You don't have to go further out, so it's not too awkward, but
I thought that you couldn't make a right-hand turn there, because I know I've seen police ticketing people at that
turning
location.
in there, that could be, because I always do it on my bike on Sunday mornings. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Phillip?
If I'm correct, the previous property was here, and this property is here.
Correct.
And the buildings that were there before, did they cover both properties?
I did not get a chance to inspect the properties before. I think there was a laneway between it, but I can't be 100% certain of that. But if you look at the aerial, it does look like that laneway was present, which I guess would also service the properties to the east of that.
So in effect, if they do develop it, it would be separately on this property and separately on the other property. It wouldn't be one big property that would take both, a building that would take on both.
Correct. I think it would have to be individual unless they were to do further acquisitions and close down the laneway, et cetera. But as it's configured now, it would be two unique pieces.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. And I have no questions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Thank you. We will close the hearing. Okay.